She was supposed to be Netflix's comeback queen, the royal rebel turned streaming royalty, with a multi-million-dollar deal, a fresh second season, and a chance to prove that she wasn't just tabloid noise. But what unfolded behind the scenes was something even her harshest critics couldn't have predicted. Because instead of delivering the polished, Emmy-worthy content Netflix had hoped for, Meghan Markle reportedly turned the entire set into a circus of chaos, scandal, and self-destruction, and it all began not with a script issue or a budget cut, but with something so trivial it almost sounds made up. Wine, not fake wine, not set dressing, but real, expensive, limited-run wine meant to be used carefully across multiple takes. And yet, according to crew members, Meghan helped herself to full cases of the stuff, carting it back to her trailer like she was stocking up for a royal wedding. And when it came time to reshoot, nothing matched. Continuity was destroyed, and worse, Meghan allegedly showed up hours late, glassy-eyed, slurring her lines, forgetting entire scenes, and throwing tantrums when called out. Producers were panicking, Netflix execs were fuming, and the set was spiraling so badly they had to ban all real alcohol on the spot, implementing emergency protocols just to keep things from falling apart completely. But it didn't stop there, because Meghan's behavior escalated, shouting matches outside her trailer, crew members walking off set, and even reports that she tried to leave with pieces of the wardrobe meant for future episodes, as if the show was just a shopping trip and everyone else was just in her way. And while Netflix was already battling bad press and subscriber losses, this behind-the-scenes nightmare was the last thing they needed, especially when insiders revealed that Meghan had become virtually unmanageable, refusing to leave her trailer unless begged, ignoring call times, showing up disheveled, and even telling her stylist that the entire show was beneath her. And that's when Netflix started reviewing her contract line by line, building a paper trail, prepping for the inevitable, because this wasn't just a delay or a diva moment. It was a train wreck unfolding in real time. And with every passing day, the question grew louder. Had Meghan Markle just sabotaged her own Hollywood future? Began as a routine shoot at a scenic winery quickly spiraled into one of the most expensive mistakes Netflix has ever let happen. Because according to multiple insiders, Meghan Markle wasn't acting during the vineyard scene, she was indulging, helping herself to entire crates of premium wine meant for filming, not props, not fakes, but the real deal. And when the cameras stopped rolling, instead of wrapping up like a professional, Meghan reportedly dragged full boxes of unopened bottles back to her trailer. No clearance, no approval, like it was a private tasting on the company's dime. And while that might sound like diva behavior, it turned into a production nightmare when she showed up 2 days in a row visibly off, late, disoriented, and completely unprepared, forcing the director to scrap entire scenes and rework the schedule just to keep continuity intact. But that wasn't even the worst part. Because the wine wasn't just a one-off mistake, it became the catalyst for a full-blown crisis, with producers losing track of wardrobe pieces, scenes no longer matching, and crew members openly questioning how much longer they could keep this going without it collapsing entirely. And all the while Meghan acted like none of it mattered, shrugging off concerns, brushing off feedback, and setting the tone for what would become the most chaotic season Netflix had ever tried to contain. Of filming, it wasn't just whispers among the crew. It was panic, because every department was feeling the fallout, from makeup scrambling to fix her face after late-night episodes, to the camera team trying to salvage shots from footage that didn't match day to day. And it all traced back to Meghan's bizarre, erratic behavior on set, like when she reportedly refused to film unless her trailer was stocked with specific snacks and cold-pressed juices from a boutique miles away, causing hours of downtime while production assistants were sent on last-minute errands just to keep her from walking off again. And when she did appear on set, she wasn't showing up to work, she was showing up to be worshipped, demanding last-minute wardrobe changes, rejecting makeup looks that had already been approved, and accusing staff of targeting her whenever they enforced even the most basic rules of production. And it reached a boiling point when one assistant director confronted her about call time delays, only to be met with a shouting match so loud it stopped the entire set, with Meghan allegedly swearing, accusing the crew of disrespect, and storming off mid-take, leaving the crew stunned, exhausted, and unsure if filming would even continue the next day, because by then it was clear this wasn't just a demanding lead. This was a total meltdown unfolding in real time. Everyone thought it couldn't get any worse. The chaos exploded into something far more serious: theft. Because producers allegedly caught Meghan attempting to leave the set with wardrobe items tagged for reshoots. Not one or two pieces, but full outfits, designer accessories, catalog costumes meant for continuity, slipped casually into her personal bags as if no one would notice. And when confronted, she didn't apologize. She reportedly lashed out, accusing staff of micromanaging and treating her like a criminal. But the reality was clear. Meghan was treating a multi-million-dollar Netflix production like it was her personal fashion closet. And while other actresses were following protocol, doing their jobs, and showing up on time, Meghan was spiraling, triggering behind-the-scenes meetings about whether she had breached her contract. And while the public saw nothing but silence, internally, Netflix was drafting new rules, banning real alcohol on set, tightening security on wardrobe, and circulating memos about incident documentation. Because they knew if this continued, they wouldn't just lose a season, they'd lose millions and potentially face legal fallout. And through it all, Meghan carried on like she was untouchable, as if nothing she did had consequences, as if the entire crew, the budget, the brand, and the viewers existed only to serve her image. Theft, wardrobe drama, and tantrums were already damaging. What happened next shifted the mood from chaotic to toxic. Because extras started quitting, supporting actors began requesting to be reassigned, and crew members were quietly begging to be moved to other projects, not because of the workload, but because the set had become emotionally exhausting. With Meghan allegedly flipping from passive-aggressive silence to explosive outbursts with no warning. One minute she was in glam, scrolling her phone. The next she was accusing a producer of sabotage because her name wasn't top billing on an internal call sheet. And these weren't private breakdowns behind closed doors. These were loud, public, ego-driven explosions right in front of cast and crew, with one eyewitness claiming she hurled a script across the room and screamed that she didn't need Netflix, all because someone offered her feedback online delivery. And that was when Netflix executives stepped in personally, with Ted Sarandos and Greg Peters demanding emergency updates, reviewing footage, and calling for crisis meetings to assess whether the show could even be saved. Because at that point, it wasn't just a rocky production, it was a PR disaster, waiting to explode. And the only thing more shocking than Meghan's behavior was that she still showed up acting like she had nothing to prove, while everyone else was scrambling just to keep the lights on. Limped along. The silence from Netflix grew louder. No trailer, no teaser, no promotional push, and by mid-July, when viewers expected a first look at the so-called second season, all they got was radio static, because behind the scenes, there wasn't enough clean footage to even cut a decent preview. Too many ruined takes, too many continuity errors, too many days where Meghan didn't show up or refused to cooperate, and editors were reportedly pulling their hair out trying to salvage anything usable. But there was nothing consistent to work with. And while Netflix publicly claimed the delay was part of a strategic rollout, insiders say the truth was far messier. They were in full-blown crisis mode, Greg Peters demanding daily updates, Sarandos reportedly calling the show a liability in private. And meanwhile, Meghan, instead of acknowledging any of the issues, doubled down, reportedly blowing up during a table read after hearing about the new no real alcohol rule, accusing the crew of targeting her, claiming she was being singled out unfairly, and even threatening to walk unless they backed off and gave her space. But the damage was done, because by that point, Netflix had already started building an exit strategy, with legal teams quietly combing through her contract and flagging every incident. The missed call times, the verbal abuse, the stolen wardrobe. Not to punish her publicly, but to protect the brand when they pulled the plug. The production wasn't just struggling, it was unraveling, and everyone knew it. The vibe on set had turned ice cold, tension hanging in the air so thick it was hard to breathe, assistants whispering about canceled shoots, extras rotating in and out because nobody wanted to stay longer than necessary, and one of the main producers even left early, flying back to Los Angeles and citing creative differences, though insiders say he simply didn't want to be associated with the mess anymore. And while nobody said it out loud, the feeling was universal. This wasn't a show anymore. It was a sinking ship, and Meghan? She seemed oblivious, or worse, indifferent, overheard in her trailer telling her stylist the whole series was beneath her, that she was the real reason Netflix had greenlit the project in the first place, talking like she was still the crown jewel while the set was collapsing around her. And that's when Netflix moved from hesitation to action, reviewing misconduct clauses, checking insurance liabilities, and preparing for the nuclear option, early termination, because the show had stopped being entertainment and started becoming evidence. Evidence of what happens when ego spins out of control and no one steps in to stop it. And Meghan's team, sensing the ground shifting, began pushing a narrative to the media, blaming creative friction, spinning it as misunderstood. Genius. But no one was buying it anymore, because the stories coming out from crew members, slurred speech, screaming matches, public walk-offs, were too detailed, too consistent, and too damaging to ignore. The dominoes were falling fast, and not just at Netflix, because the industry was watching and Meghan's Hollywood stock was tanking in real time. Networks that once lined up to work with her were now ghosting her team. One streaming service pulled out of a parenting docuseries deal without explanation. NBC quietly shelved a primetime game show offer she had been circling. Meetings were canceled, pitches went cold. And the message was clear. The doors that once opened wide for Meghan Markle were now slamming shut. And it wasn't just executives pulling away. Even longtime fans were turning, confused comments flooding social media, supporters asking what happened, how the woman they once admired had become a walking PR disaster. And as more on-set leaks poured in, like the now-deleted TikTok from a background actor who claimed Meghan screamed and tossed her script across the room because she didn't like a pacing note, the public tide fully turned. It was no longer a debate about whether Meghan was misunderstood. It was a reckoning, because Netflix wasn't just dealing with a difficult actress. They were managing a full-blown liability, and every attempt to soften the story, every puff piece, every planted quote, was drowned out by the reality bleeding from the set. A reality where crew morale was dead, production was broken, and Meghan was reportedly showing up late, glassy-eyed, ignoring hair and makeup, refusing wardrobe, and walking out mid-scene like she didn't care if the show lived or died. Then came the final blow, the moment everything snapped, because on what was supposed to be a major shoot day, Meghan reportedly showed up completely unprepared. No lines memorized, hair undone, makeup refused, wardrobe rejected, and according to multiple crew members, she reeked of alcohol, slurred her way through blocking, and when the director tried to intervene, she didn't argue, didn't fight. She just casually walked off set, got into her black SUV, and drove away like nothing mattered. No explanation, no warning, just gone. And within 24 hours, Netflix made the call. Production halted indefinitely, trailers canceled, press events scrapped, editors pulled from post-production, and a vague, sanitized statement was released citing creative redirection. But inside the studio walls, the message was crystal clear. The show was dead, the budget was burned, and Meghan's contract was functionally over. And while her PR team raced to spin the exit as mutual, the truth had already leaked. Hollywood was done playing along, because after all the second chances, all the carefully curated narratives, all the money, all the patience, Meghan Markle had gone from misunderstood to unmanageable, and the industry that once bent over backwards for her had finally drawn the line, quietly cutting ties, closing doors, and moving on. Because in the world of entertainment, there's only so much chaos you can cause before the spotlight you crave turns into the one thing you can't control: silence. And just like that, what was supposed to be Meghan Markle's triumphant return became her most public unraveling. Not with a scandalous headline or a royal feud, but with a vanishing act that played out in real time on a Netflix set imploding under the weight of ego, excess, and entitlement. Because when the cameras finally stopped rolling, what remained wasn't a finished show or a comeback story. It was a graveyard of broken contracts, burned bridges, and a reputation in free fall. And now, as the dust settles and Hollywood moves on, one truth remains impossible to ignore. Meghan didn't just walk away from a project. She walked away from the last thread of goodwill the industry had left for her. And in an environment where image is everything and behavior gets remembered longer than credits ever do, she may have just written herself out of the very narrative she tried so hard to control. not with a bang, not with a standing ovation, but with an unfinished script, a locked trailer door, and a legacy that ends not with applause, but with silence and regret.